speakers, we will be able to get questions both from the audience here and both from the online audience. Again, welcome to the panel, Combating Disinformation and Hate Speech, the Role of Digital Activism. I will be your moderator. My name is Gülsin Harman. I'm a journalist and media researcher based in Istanbul. I'm mostly doing freelance reporting for the New York Times and BBC Monitoring in Istanbul. And I happen to work also as a media researcher in various capacities for Google News Initiative, Sempra Media, among many organizations. In 2016, for the International Press Institute, I researched the online harassment of journalists in Turkey, looking into networks of state-sponsored trolls and many other actors targeting journalists. Today we will hear from three esteemed panelists. The order of speaking, I will introduce the speakers first, we will listen to their presentations in order, and then we will come around for a round of questions. And first I would like to give the floor to Salih Hammoud, who is sitting next to me. Dr. Salih Hammoud is an expert in artificial intelligence in communication and media, working with non-governmental organizations, governmental institutions, and private sector firms across wider Middle East and Europe. Her research interests include artificial intelligence, language, and digital reputation in new media. She is an assistant professor at the American University of Beirut, the American University of Dubai, the Lebanese American University, and the Indian Institute of Management to bring academic knowledge into the industrial sector using creative ways. The floor is yours, Dr. Salih Hammoud, and we are looking forward to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Off. Testing, okay. Hello again. So it's a pleasure to be here and to see new faces, and I hope to see these faces more and more, because I think we have a lot of things in common. We were talking with the panelists and the ladies that we do share in this region a lot of commonalities between our societies. So I'd like to deliver what I have to deliver, and I'd like to keep it as interactive as much as possible. So basically we're talking about a very heated topic nowadays. We're talking about new media. It's not because it's what I studied, but I think new media now is governing all sectors of our lives, in politics, in finance, in education, when we're talking about the biggest industry that's growing, which is supply chain, and many others. And as we see, when we're talking about media, it's important to see what happened, what has brought in the new media, what has caused its new emergence, and to make it look like more like a boogeyman to us. Because with the integration of AI into the new media, people are getting more and more scared of it. On the other hand, more people are taking advantage of it. We have seen so many examples of it. Not to talk much about this topic, it's interesting to see the sequence of how the integration of technology into the media had brought into us a new behavior. We are behaving differently. We look at younger generations and we say they're aliens. Elder people look at us and they say we are aliens. And it's true. We've been alienated from the natural, if I may say, not the natural, but the stereotypical aspect of humanity. So let's take a step backwards and we look into how media emerged, and how did we kind of grow that behavior towards the media. So the media has shifted within the shifts of technology. So it was walking hand in hand. I think I lost my voice again. So media and technology were walking hand in hand. At the same time, it has created a lot of skepticism around it. So if you look at the television, when the television came, I'm not going to go back so much in time, but let's jump into the heat media, as we call it, the hot media. So when the television came, people were so much afraid that it's bringing in so much stereotypes. It's bringing so much violence. It's bringing so much sex into its content. And that's why if you read about the history of media, you look at how much the influence of technology has brought into the media and how's people behaving towards it. We go fast forward when the internet or the computer was introduced. Before the computer was introduced, we had the automation revolution. The automation revolution, people were so much afraid of it and they were resisting it. Also with the computer, with the internet. So what we can see here is a pattern of people, a pattern of human beings, a pattern of users who are either embracing these technological tools or just refusing them. Digging faster into AI, what happened? We have fed the AI. If we're talking about artificial intelligence, we human beings have put that input into the artificial intelligence. Everything that we see, texts for example, we have put it in these platforms. So the type of resistance that have been created is taking a shift. First of all, we look at people who are saying that there is hate speech. Yes, there is hate speech. Is it rising? Yes, is it rising? But the question is it rising because of the rise of number of users and the number of tools? Or is it rising because it has democratized the way we communicate together? If we look at it, can we say that hate speech is the other spectrum of freedom of speech? There are so many questions that we have to ask ourselves here. But the first thing that I personally, as a scholar or as a human being, or I'd say as a feminist, I'd say the best part is to embrace it. So if we agree on embracing it and learning how to navigate through it efficiently and ethically, I think is our way forward. Do we establish this fact, or do we have any people who resist the artificial intelligence rise? Who sees that AI is a boogeyman and it's going to come and make us all sit at home, or it's going to make teachers sit away, or it's going to take away all our data? Who believes AI is a bad thing? We don't have any resistance in the room. Who sees opportunities in AI? Excellent. Can I know your like your way of your scope of work? Very good. Okay, very good. So we're talking about NGOs. NGOs are integrating AI a lot in their work. However, if we look at it, we're seeing a lot of things at stake as well. So where's the accountability in that? I'm giving this a little introduction before I give the panel to the ladies to dig into the journalism aspect, just to ask few questions and to let us, all of us, think about this topic all together. Like, what is our responsibility on the individual level? That's one thing. What is our responsibility on the enterprise level? What is our responsibility on the humanitarian level? Because this is at this time we are at a crossroad, because we are at a gap between people who are trying to refuse this kind of technological advancement and people who are embracing it faster. But what's happening is that people in the middle, the audience of, for example, the audience that are influenced by this rise, are the ones who are actually and mostly influenced by it in a way that's keeping them out of the game. So let's talk about social media, for instance. Social media was introduced in a way where it disrupted journalism. Anyone can disagree on that? No one can disagree on that. It changed the business models of freelance journalists. It changed the business models of newspapers or news websites, media channels, and everything else. It brought in new opportunities to rising citizen journalists, but at the same time, it leaves us, all of us, at a huge responsibility that these people, many of them are educated by people who believe that are educated, but they are actually spreading thoughts that are bringing the humanity at stake. One of these things is the hate speech. I talk about this because, and I gave this introduction, because I come from a country which is known for its high freedom of speech. Not technically, but theoretically speaking, because things have been changing so much. I come from Lebanon, which is a very rich country in controversies, if I may say. Just take a very simple introduction. For example, media in Lebanon and journalism in Lebanon was based so much on hate speech. And this is a funny story. Can you imagine that in Lebanon, our media channels, our televisions, our radio stations, our newspapers, we were the beacon of the Middle East in journalism and in freedom of speech, these actually were based on hate speech. Why? We were at the middle of the civil war, and one politician decided to actually incept a media channel. He was actually a president of a political party. And then, because it was at a state of chaos and under the umbrella of freedom of speech, many other political parties also founded media channels. So imagine freedom of speech versus hate speech, because each media channel was founded to actually counter the speech of the other media channel. Fast forward, when we had the new media, or when we started having the social media, I was so optimistic and happy about it, because I said, yes, this is, and I have a background of media, but I never wanted to be a journalist in Lebanon, because I didn't believe in journalism in Lebanon. I had always problems with my professors when I said we were studying, and they told me we were studying about the objectivity of press and media. And I remember, and until now I say it, at least speaking about Lebanon, there is no objectivity in media, especially in Lebanon. It's a huge spectrum. And because these media channels were founded on these ideologies, and these ideologies are so much different, so much based on denouncing others. This is where, as I was saying, I was optimistic about having the social media, and people started to have voice. And that was also, I was so much optimistic when we had the, I don't know, we had the, what do you call it, revolution? We were talking about it, I don't know. Mini revolution, let's call it, or protest, or demonstration, or an immature revolution, I would call it. So in 2019, so I was happy that we really had a platform to speak up. We had a platform to reach the youth. We had platform to reach people who didn't care about political movements and whatsoever, to reach them in a different way. And that was it. It was really good. It had a huge influence, yes. And I'm still optimistic about it, yet the thing is, it brought a lot of traffic into it. It brought a lot of bots into it. And what happens is that if we look at the framework of the current or the strongest social media companies now, like Meta, it's a little bit frustrating to see what is happening. If we give a very recent example about the recent conflict or war in Palestine, between Israel and Palestine, we look at how the algorithms of these platforms have been able to, and this is one thing that I'd like to highlight also, these companies, they do have, of course, political agendas, because we cannot separate the political agenda from these big media channels or media platforms, but they preferred, and they do prefer, and this is the case for so many media channels, preferring profit over the freedom of speech or hate speech or truth or debunking false information or whatsoever. And this is the last point that I'd like to raise, which is we are at a very critical time where, and it's not a compliment, but organizations like here which are working on spreading awareness and knowledge outside the scope of profiting from these initiatives is something we need. Because now within the rise of AI, we have more interest in AI companies than in social media companies, which means we have an upcoming, let's say, battle, which is also different than the current one that we have. We are speaking to algorithms, we are speaking to languages. We have to say that, yes, we all speak English, most of us speak English, but let's not forget our culture and heritage. And we have to say that most people still, all over the world, they still prefer their mother tongue language. And this is where the AI comes handy, where it helps us to utilize our mother tongue language to communicate clearly what we mean to clear, what we mean to communicate. However, these algorithmic approaches, these algorithmic equations, these companies are more controlled by companies who are aiming to make profit, no matter what the price would be. Unfortunately, these companies are coming, generally speaking, and they are generally speaking also, I don't mean to be stereotypical in what I'm saying, because we discuss stereotypes in media, but generally speaking, they come from, not from the global south, they come from the north. So this is where things become, and competition becomes more and more and more difficult, unless we focus on local initiatives, such initiatives, so that we can bring in the right tools to actually fight hate speech, to actually break stereotypes, debunk false information, but through technological tools. And when we talk about technological tools, we shall never forget that language is a very important aspect of technology. Yes, because without language, we would never have been able to receive these technologies. And we have to be proud of our languages. And we see that within the increase of including mother tongue languages into the technological tools or social media platforms or WhatsApp or whatever new AI tools are bringing, we have people from the younger generations that are using their mother tongue language. And this is very important when we are talking about AI, and we're talking especially in journalism, because it's all about texts, it's all about language. Even the pictures, they are language, they are text. So what we feed in the current text that we share is a much higher responsibility than we think. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hammoud. You provided us so many points to think about, but I will, for the sake of continuing the presentation, I will just take one point from your presentation to pivot to Özen Baş Hoca. And I think that when you mentioned citizen journalism and how journalism is disrupted, the journalism that we used to know in a very traditional sense is disrupted and had to redefine itself over the decades in response to social media platforms and all these algorithmic interventions. And more in the international journalistic community, there's this debate going on whether it is time to differentiate news from journalism. Since journalism, it's one of the profession, compared to, for example, being a lawyer, compared to being a doctor, journalism is a fairly recent profession, which the ethical standards have only came to formation in the last century. But more and more, this distinction, whether the necessity of this distinction is discussed within the journalistic community, since news now belongs to everyone. I'm saying this without any negative connotation. Any, let's say, TikTok influencer, any anonymous account on X, formerly Twitter, can comment on the news or can provide their own news. But are they journalists? What differentiates between a content producer commenting on the news than a professional journalist? So in that regard, and I'm sure that we will have a very fruitful discussion over this topic, but I will use this this point about news versus journalism to pivot to Özen Baş Hoca. Özen Baş is an assistant professor of new media and the vice dean of the School of Communication at Kadir Has University, Istanbul. Baş studies political communication, cognitive and participatory effects of emerging media use on different social demographic groups. Her work focuses on the content and use of media messages to inform citizens and political participation. The floor is yours, Özen Hoca. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gülsin Hocam, for your kind introduction. If I may, I have a small presentation to share with you. Okay. All right, and then okay. All right. So thank you very much, Hocam, Feli, for this nice background, and I think we're very well situated. Is this working? Yes. Okay. I need to come closer. All right. Thank you. So also, Gülsin Hanım, based on your comment between, how do we differentiate the line between news and journalism? It's really, so I work in the Department of New Media, where we're trying to kind of move away, intentionally or intentionally, from framing our students or giving the formality to our students that they're not going to be working in the media sector, they're not going to be necessarily be calling themselves journalists, but they are content producers. So it's really kind of complicated, because what are the defining characteristics of content versus news, and how do journalists kind of embrace a mission? They do embrace a mission of informing the public, and all those content producers that we see out there distributing their opinions, emotions, voices through social media and other platforms very easily do not have those same considerations. They're not coming from that tradition. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because to be able to voice our opinions with social media, the emancipatory or the participatory role, the ideal of social media, where it will kind of equalize people from advantaged and disadvantaged segments of society, at least giving them a platform to voice their opinions, to make their pledges heard. So yes, there is definitely an opportunity, but we always come back to that, the matter of kind of striking a balance. So yes, the platforms are enabling the technology, yes, is enabling new media, but what do we make of it is kind of up to us, and we are, me as a media scholar, trying to make sense of the content that is being processed, how users, which includes citizens and all those other type of use of media content, are affecting us at the level of individuals and also as political agents, whether there's an effect on that. So that's overall kind of what I studied. And in this small presentation, and I hope to cut it short so that we will have time for question and answers, but look at the general idea, or what the research literature says or attributes to the role of social media for political mobilization and for social protest, for digital activism. Will try to touch upon to the topic of if there's a way to combat hate speech or not. And I think the Hunting Foundation for this great initiative, and all the panelists here, it's lovely to be here, but there are people in the panelists among us who are more experienced in the techniques and in the different types of NGOs where combating hate speech is being more actively used from an activist point of view per se. So I'll try to kind of show the gist of what the general research literature, academic literature kind of says about the potential, the affordances and limitations of social media for political mobilization. So In general, I mean, you will recall the debates and the great kind of hope that was inspired during the Arab Spring revolutions, or whatever we call them, that social media, so these are like Twitter revolutions, Facebook revolutions. So what was the deal there is that the main argument or the main premise behind that attribution of the galvanizing role of social media for protest was that social media means creating and extending network ties among people where information in order to kind of mobilize people can be shared pretty quickly throughout large networks. So on a social media or social networking case, back then Facebook was very popular, and so we were able to kind of be exposed to those protest related content, or updates about social protests, collective action events, and all those kind of mobilizing information was basically much more easy to be exposed to regular users, regular citizens. So that's kind of one of the kind of strength or the main idea for why social media can enable or facilitates digital activism and social protests or collective action. So overall, we can kind of categorize the contributions of social media to collective action kind of in three kind of points, but these 3 points are really interrelated with each other. The first one is, so these are kind of a bit, let's say, more can be outdated, or from the standpoint of social media or social protest activists. So how do these fully fledged protests, social protests or social revolutions were enabled by social media? So this is coming from that more like a collectivistic, more organized social protest and collective actions. So yes, what do social media, social networks provide for a protest is organizational resources. It's much easier to organize, people who are going to be involving in a social protest or digital activism effort. Putting the word out there is very easy because of the affordance of social media being networks that are interconnected with each other. So once you put a word out there for a call for action, for a specific offline protest, the message will be distributed quickly and will be reached and consumed by many people very quickly at an unprecedented level and speed that was not available in the legacy media, in the old media, so non-new media. So in the Egyptian case, this was much discussed, how the instant and logistic updates via people sharing on Twitter where the protests were happening, where police was striking towards protesters, where the health sanitary kind of posts were. So actually very much logistical information was being spread. Advice from other international activists, such as from Tunisia, were shared very quickly. And so it was supposedly, so there's a question mark here, that with these kind of being organized over social media actually provides a space that is kind of free of state control, which is actually, again, there's a question mark to it. Back then in 2013, this was the idea that with social media, we can get away from, or activists can get away from, more like autocratic governmental pressure if they want to protest. So the first one was the organizational. It's easy to organize the resources there through networks. The second one is more like at a psychological level, which I am actually studying in a more in-depth way, is that how the digital activism or activism in general is kind of galvanized. Why people participate in civic activism or political activism. So the main idea that social psychologists find or the studies suggest is that you need to be feeling like part of a group. You need to have a collective identity to be able to act on behalf of that group. And due to the modality of social media, where images and symbols that can be quickly spread, without much effort, the formation of those collective identities are, so people sharing and first feeling, forming collective identities, and then strengthening their identification with such group, like human rights activists or feminist groups, or in the case of the Gezi movement, so part of being a çapulcu. So that identity can be formed and then shared and then strengthened via social media. So that's one of the important dimensions of contributions of social media for collective action. And finally, it's much more easy to share content. This is again in comparison to traditional media times, where you need to negotiate, let's say, for a social movement leader to kind of being provided a platform to be able to raise the points or raise the grievances, the main points of the social movement. There was a lot of kind of negotiation with the with the journalists or media professionals. In this case, this social media provides a free place, a space to express ideas, express concerns, opinions in terms of all the, and again, so it does that very quickly and without much effort. So again, these are kind of all the ways how social media contributes to collective action, facilitating political mobilization because of the network structure, and through which mobilizing information can be spread and shared very quickly, and the identification of people feeling like part of a group, which would then lead them to act further in order to better the situations of the group. And so the belief that, where there's more social media, where the internet penetration is higher, people will be protesting more for democracy, and this will kind of be combating against the repression of autocratic regimes. However, we shouldn't be that quick to jump into conclusions. As we all know, governments do use these tools, information communication technology tools, and social media, and all those other mobile communication techniques and advanced ones, they in order to suppress those oppositionary people or those social protests, if they think they pose threat to their existence, and they experiment on different ways of doing it. And typically they can censor content, and we have I don't think we will be looking for or be having difficulty finding examples to such governments. Censoring content, countering criticism, and producing propaganda by army of trolls, as you all can think of very quickly examples. Disinformation campaigns funded, organized by governments, cutting off internet, that's technological infrastructure where they have control over, and being able to identify the political opposition very quickly, and in a way, in a more efficient way than they would be able to identify, offline, in the offline cases, offline protesters. So ICTs, information communication technologies, these, technologies are unfortunately not inherently democratic. It depends on who is using them, obviously. And Christensen and Groshek, I wanted to put it here that these tools, the use of social media, emerging media for repressing political opposition is not only used by autocratic governments, they are equally, at least, used by democratic governments as well. So they do have a very detailed quantitative over time study where they show that both type of governments, if you will, do use these technologies to suppress opposition when they want to. Of course, there are, very different, kind of contextualities there. So, so what can we do? So I wanted to emphasize that there are individual level activism types and also collective activism types. However, if we talk about collective action, it's not only that, I mean, we do not mean only those organized efforts or social media campaigns or other, offline protests where, number of people are important. So individual acts of liking or commenting on a on a hate speech, for example, if you try to, for example, counter a hate speech, that can in itself, regardless of the effect of it, which is a different kind of point of discussion, should be considered as a collective action, and hence, because it's mediated by a technology, emerging media, it should be called digital activism. And there are examples in Turkey, I'm sure you can easily recall, of such, examples where social media is being used in order to increase awareness, and without, being kind of impromptu responses of people, disorganized. However, they are kind of coming from, individual level of efforts. Okay, so hashtag campaigns are examples of such digital activism efforts, which can take place at the level of, individual level without organized action, and also some social activists do engage in organized social media campaigns by using hashtags in order to increase activism, raise awareness, and also change the situation, so kind of create some effect at the end. Political context do matter. So if we're talking about Turkey, there are some cultural and political characteristics that we need to consider. I will open the floor on this point for us to discuss this further, what could be the differences. However, Sally's point here is important, I think, is that, so there are universal things, right? So, and I wanted to mention that individual level psychological, psychological variables there for why we move, why we, participate. So those are perhaps the universal, the generalized themes for what motivates people for action. However, there are, as I said, some cultural contextualities and differences. And hate speech is one of the, of course, the main concern of this panel, and the overarching project we're part of, why we're here, is that hate speech and disinformation, they go hand in hand, obviously. Disinformation, or using, misinformation intentionally, being used in order to use hate speech, is also very common. And these acts of hate speech, distributing that, is on social media, unfortunately, so creates a limitation to our, digital activism efforts. So how to combat that is a question that should be discussed. And there are different ways of detecting hate speech online, right? So algorithms, AI, and natural language processing models try to detect hate speech automatically, mostly in the language of English, so to our disadvantage. However, many, actually, at least I know from Turkey, that there are many data scientists, computer scientists, developing models of detecting Turkish hate speech on Twitter and in some other platforms as well. So, and they experiment with different detection methods, and then on, response to that, there can be some, what can be done to combat that hate speech is the counter speech, is the direct response to direct engagement with the poster or communicator of hate speech in order to decrease the effects of it, or maybe counter the effect, or to correct if there's a misinformation that is being shared, to correct that. And counter speech is seen as form of digital activism in that case. There are some examples are out there in terms of examples of counter speech. So I Am Here movement is the biggest, largest one that everyone knows, which is based in Sweden, where people organized try to kind of counter detect first. So these are human people, not bots or AI generated or computer generated tools, where come together and post counter speech acts on where they see hate speech posts on Facebook. This is how it started, and it's one of the largest such efforts in order to combat hate speech through counter speech. But assessing the effectiveness of this type of engagement with hate speech online is that needs to be still developed. So the computer-mediated tools that I just mentioned, they have proved to be, efficient on large scale. For example, on Reddit subtweets and subreddits, they were found to be, successful in, decreasing the volume of hate speech when these counter-speech acts were spread. However, we still need to understand the internal, psychological dynamics for why and what type of, counter speech is actually working for what type of hate speech, because there are, different elements or different types of counter speech. For example, empathy-based counter speech or sharing personal experiences is a type of counter speech, and at the same time there are different types of hate speech as well. Dehumanization is one of them, spreading disinformation, insulting, humiliation. So what type of counter speech will work for what type of hate speech is something that needs to be kind of more fine-tuned, and then being analyzed at the level of individual rather than large volumes of data. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll end it here, and then we'll be happy to discuss these issues further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Özen Hoca. And when you emphasize that the social media platforms and the internet structure as we have today is not inherently democratic, and this is exactly true, and a lot of water under the bridge, that you would remember the Time magazine cover in 2011 with an anonymous protester, and it was the response of one of the most leading American news outlets to the events of the Arab uprisings. And for the editorial choice for this cover was explained in a way that all these protesters that decades ago we will not be even aware of their existence, now they have a voice through social media, and it was a complete approval and an acceptance of the social media platforms in 2011. So we came a long way from that position, and now we are completely grappling with a real reckoning with the power that social media platforms hold over the citizens and journalists. So thank you so much for your presentation. And regarding the points that you raised, of course, I'm sure that we will have a interesting discussion. And the last but absolutely not the least, a colleague of mine, a journalist like me from North Macedonia, Elida Zylbeari is a project coordinator at Metamorphosis Foundation in North Macedonia with broad experience focusing on freedom of speech and strengthening media projects. She's the editor of news contents, mentoring journalists and fact checkers. She's a certified trainer for media literacy and countering disinformation. Since 2012, Elida Zylbeari has been the editor-in-chief of the Albanian news portal, Portal B, and since 2020, she has been the editor-in-chief of the Albanian version of the fact-checking platform Truth Matter. So I'm sure that your experiences are somehow unique and yet similar to what we experience in Turkey. The floor is yours. Thank you, Elida.
With a presentation. Hi. So I also have a small presentation. I hope it's small because when I prepared it, I had so much to say, and of course, you want to make it short and to the point. Yes, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, as I come from an organization that has its own media, basically what we do is that we are activists and journalists and NGO, CSO workers. We're not simply journalists that go on field and ask for statements from this political party or that, or dealing with disasters. We have a mission to fulfill, and our point of view is trying to thank you is trying to build a narrative, a positive narrative, a constructive narrative, journalism that helps people, journalism that tries to fix problem, because we cannot do that for the politicians. So basically, coming from that point of view, also I work on the field of fact-checking, basically providing the truth for most of the readers, because online there's so much chaos. As I said, my presentation will be the role of media in activism, and on the other side, the role of digital activism in combating disinformation. We are working with disinformation since 2011, and we have gone through different phases of technological progress, and we are now at the point where disinformation is global, and we are analyzing global trends. Of course, digital activism has freedom of speech at its main movement, and its main pillar where it can be expressed. So basically, people utilize online platforms to express their thoughts and concerns and whatever issues they have. And one of the platforms that can be used, besides the great presentation of the professor, besides social media, it's online media. And as I come from online media, I would shortly say a few points. How can online media and how have we helped in causes in North Macedonia when we were dealing with, we still are, but the previous government was very autocratic, and we had so much problems. And now our ex-prime minister, is in exile in Hungary because so much wrongdoings. Orban is his friend, so you can imagine. What can media do? Of course, as you all know, I will use the point we, because I'm a journalist, so we can amplify voices, we can amplify concerns, and we can give these activists, these causes, free space to tell their concerns. Because what happens is they start an online uprising or an online cause, and sometimes it's not enough to go higher, to go in the national level. So here are the online media that, of course, can put a spotlight on these causes and make them amplified and make them even bigger. But most important, personally for me, is framing issues, because yes, we can amplify the cause, but we can report about the cause, we can report about protests or any kind of problems people face, but the way we frame the issue is very important, because sometimes you can say that there's a protest over there, it's legitimate, the people have concerns, this place is falling down, etc. Or you can say these people are bad, they are disrupting our freedom of movement, or they are causing civil disobedience, or they are mean to the whole country. So basically, it's very important how media, online media, and traditional media also can frame these issues, and we can help or unhelp a lot in these cases. Here is our, that's me, our media trying to help the protesters from two different, yeah, I will not say revolution, because we had big hopes in 2015, 16 that things will change, but another time we will talk about the political situation in Macedonia and the difficulties we are facing. What happened here is that there was these two movements, but very similar, of course, starting from the hashtag protestiram, which is I protest, and then color for revolution, which is, it's really, they had colors in the street. These two movements started as a protest against the previous government, who, besides being autocratic, besides putting pressure in our organization and those few media who were free to criticize this kind of government, this kind of ruling, they, of course, they were corrupted, and they were deep in nepotism and inefficiency, and all the elements of the autocrats. Basically, what they did, one of the biggest things that they did, of all the wrongs they did, was wiretapping like 2,400 citizens, journalists, opposition, and any key person that they thought they are very dangerous to the ruling party. So this scandal was big and was uncovered by the leader of ex-leader of the opposition, and they were releasing these tapes of the conversation between the prime minister ordering Skopje 2014. It's a project of a few monuments that were paid like 5 times more, and we practically heard the prime minister with the minister organizing any kind of corruption, the building of Skopje, the deals that were made for building Chinese highways, and the percentage they get from the tender that they would make with the Chinese. I mean, basically, it was very creepy to hear this. One journalist died. I mean, died. He was... the prosecution, of course, is inefficient, so we don't know whether he was killed, because the court should do their job. But during that ruling, he died, and we heard talks about this, how, and it didn't include crimes, but it was very serious talk. However, people after this, people were really pissed off, and they gathered themselves in Facebook and Twitter in order to protest and to ask for a special prosecution, because our normal prosecution, of course, doesn't do its job. And all the media, of course, one of the elements of the autocratic ruling was that all of the traditional media were in the pocket of the government. By one part was bought by the government with the advertisement and the money that the government gives, legal money, but they could not say anything. And one part was frightened. So the internet was the only space to freely express concerns, and citizens, students, any kind of background, Albanians, Macedonians, Turks, Serbs, because Macedonia is a multi-ethnic country, they gathered online or to organize these protests. There was violence, of course, and we as a media, We stayed like for 4 months, day and night, to cover all the violence that was going on there. And you cannot see this on traditional media. I mean, there were few texts and few articles on the media saying somebody's protesting there, but it's a civil disobedience. While on the street, thousands of people were ravaging. And we were there all. This is how we helped. That's me on there. I mean, the flags are together. It was a big cause, and this is how media can help. We were giving free space to all the speakers and whoever wanted to express their concern, and we were filming all of it and documenting it for the international community to see what's going on. People were throwing colorful balloons to government institutions where the corrupt people were working there. Also, what can we do is setting the agenda, because we can frame the issue, but sometimes you have to decide, will you let go of that issue or you make it worse? I mean, there are subjects, discourses that sometimes need just to let them be resolved by their own, and not to give very much spotlight to a politician who gives hate speech, who is really hating online or offline, or and I always say this to our journalists, every person, you cannot film every person. I mean, even though he might be a politician, sometimes you have to choose not to show this kind of speech, because it's harmful, and we just have to name it. About media objectivity, yeah, there is no objectivity. We try to balance the information, but we cannot give space to the same space to aggressor and the victim. It's impossible, and it's not fair. I'm a journalist. I will be objective. I will try to hear your argument, but if your argument is it's a lie, then yeah, I will tell you, okay, this guy is lying. This is real journalism, and you cannot try to act like I'm from out of space. I've learned just two things, like I need this side and that's journalism. No, that's not an efficient journalism. And advocacy for change. When we were, as I said, we are activists. Our journalists also denounce hate speech. They not just, I mean, when we notice it, we just not, okay, this is hate speech, we're gonna just monitor it. No, we go to the prosecution, to the police, and denounce this person who spreads hate speech. At least this is the least that we can do, and this is on our agenda. And therefore I tell that to all my colleagues, even though you are journalists, you are a citizen. You can act upon it, not just, you know, seeing it and being an observer and then just let it go. And these are our cases. For example, the first case, it's on Albanian, I'm sorry, but it's these people were this is a legal parking lot. They were taking this place. This is a public space. Some illegal people, criminals, they just took the spot. And what we did is, we report about it, but we also went to the police and we went to the prosecution, and the prosecution has started a procedure, which is it's a big success for us as activist journalists. And then afterwards, we don't know what's going to happen, but we did our job as activists in this part. The other one is that we have a regional project that we participate on, and we are spotting these trolls of Balkans and people who are very influential. This Biljana Vankovska is a candidate for president, and she hates Albanians, and she usually shares hate speech about Albanians, and I think that even more other ethnical nationalities are in her agenda. However, we called upon her, and we spread this. We made a picture of a troll, and we said this, okay, this is the person that wants to be your president. And this was shared digitally, and it went viral. And another, that's me with my colleagues, is Freedom Not Fear. We were organizing, of course, panels and debates, and going to cities and telling against censorship, what it means for journalists to have their free space, and what it means for people to have free speech. The challenges, this is my second part of the presentation when I go to hate speech and how these are the challenges, and I'm sure there are more of this digital age. I mean, harassment, online censorship, etc. But most of all, what we work on is disinformation. So we have started with local disinformation, and we have come to a point where we map disinformation from malign actors. And in this part, I would like to make a small recap of how disinformation became this big actor in the hybrid war. I mean, not just physical war, but nowadays we live in times of hybrid war. It was amplified. Disinformation exists for centuries since we exist, but it was amplified via social networks who day by day they get stronger with Ukraine, Donbass, and annexation of Crimea led by Kremlin. So what Russia did was trying through their channels, was trying through this the agency, the IRA. This is the internet. It's real. You can Google it. It's called Internet Research Agency. And people who work here, they are their responsibility is to share the narratives of the Kremlin Russian narratives, and their main point was then to justify their annexation of Crimea, to say that to dehumanize Ukrainian people and to justify their historical, I don't know, anything that could be accepted to the world for their wrongdoings, using bots and using real people, trolls. Then we you know, COVID, we had much disinformation in COVID for the vaccine and for the virus itself. Moving to North Macedonia, what is in US elections, Brexit, I will not go into details. What I would like to say is one element of disinformation coming from malign states is focusing on local issues that could be divisive. For example, they see there's a problem, multi-ethnic, I don't know, religious, any kind of divisive narrative going in one country, and they like put more fire to it by making it worse. And what's happening is that Macedonia has issues with its neighbors, and currently it's Bulgaria. It's a name, it's historical issue, like every country in Balkans do, and they are blocking each other, NATO, EU, and this is okay for Kremlin because basically when you see chaos in other part of Balkan, in other part of the world, you feel okay of your own wrongdoings, of your own war in Ukraine. So as much as we are in chaos politically or any kind of chaos, Kremlin is fine, and it's putting up a fire and making it worse by, as I said, exacerbating more and more issues that exist in our country. And this is a hybrid warfare technique. But it's not all that bad. I mean, we have strategies and we have means to fight these disinformation narratives on the local level, on regional level, on world level, and of course campaigns are always there. It's more global. What we do is on local level we have the site of Truth Meter. We have debunking disinformation that is from political actors in Macedonia inside, you know, they lie about each other, they spread fake narratives, they spread propaganda, etc. Therefore, we follow this. We have this counter spin. It's called because sometimes when they don't classically lie about another the political opponent, but they use they distort the information, they spin it. So we have our articles creating this counter spin. We follow the electoral promises, and afterwards we say that you didn't do this and this from your program. The regional network is more active, and 2 days ago we had this, no, it was yesterday actually, we celebrated International Fact-Checking Day in Skopje. This network of six Balkan countries is focused on mapping the disinformation that comes from Russia mostly, but there's China and there are other countries, and comes first of all in Serbia, because Serbia is more friendly to Russia, and their media, Russian media, the whole Balkan, the whole Europe blocked Russian media, but Serbia did not. And this narrative of saying that justifying the war in Ukraine and trying to involve in our internal affairs, then from Serbia spreads to Macedonia, to Albania, to Kosovo, etc. So and we are trying to, we are mapping these malign actors, malign media, and saying that beware of disinformation. We have produced multiple reports on how and what are the current states of disinformation and what are the topics of disinformation every 4 months. And then we as an organization, first of all, are part of IFCN. It's international fact-checking organization. You have to be a member of it. You have to follow strict rules, methodology, donate money. You have to be full transparent when you get, where do you get the money, who's your team, and what do you do. And being part of IFCN, we are applied to be Facebook or Meta, I don't know, how do you call it? Let's call it Facebook, third-party fact checker. So when you see this false information, maybe you have seen it or not, we flag the disinformation that is being shared on Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. And we see that we debunk the article, we publish an article, then we put the link in this special program that Facebook has, and they they lower the reach of the disinformation, and whoever wants to share it, this thing will pop out, and it has a link to the original text. And for that, for being this harsh on disinformation, we have been a target of threats. This is our team, and this is a message telling telling people that these are the censors of Facebook and you should kill them all. And it has like 102 shares right now. I mean, this is not right now, this is all a bit. Basically, we have been subject of threats because we are trying as activists, as journalists, to spread the truth. And the truth is so unpleasant for some people, and basically half of North Macedonia. Okay, this is just the results of campaigns for media literacy. I will say one word, one sentence. Media literacy is a long shot. Media literacy should start from the small age of, I don't know, children who are very small in the schools, and it should have a program, and it should be built upon it. It takes time. And but we're trying to do that now because we don't have media literacy at school. We're trying to do this with different CSOs, granting, etc. And debunking articles and fact checks are ad hoc, are just an acute cure for disinformation, and this is more of a long shot. Thank you. I hope I'm not that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elida. You know that for a lot of Western colleagues of ours, for a lot of Western journalists, it could give them a small heart attack to hear you saying in the same sentence that we are activists, we are advocating for change, and we are journalists. There's exactly, and so the journalistic objectivity is getting more and more a hot topic, even in the most traditional schools of thought within journalism. So actually, I would very much go into that discussion about where objectivity stands, and when you said also like journalism should not be giving the same space to the aggressor and to the victim, but maybe we can have this discussion later, and that I will be very much interested too. Do we have any questions from the audience? Sure. Teşekkürler. Let's wait. Sure. Let's wait for the mic, please, for the translation. And for the online audience also, thank you.
First, hello? Yes. First, thank you very much to each and every one of this panel. Very well presentation, complex issues, difficult issues. I am not in the field of media. I am a professor at New York University College of Dentistry. Why I'm here? Because I was in Istanbul, and Hrant Dink was my close friend. And many of the meetings we went together in Armenia and here. At the same time, I should say that I am the chairman of international relations representing Armenia in World Dental Federation. Every profession has decency, respect, rules and regulations, objectivity, integrity, and reporting as is. Instead of being the judge, we are not the judge. So it's very important to represent whatever it is, the facts, and to support them. In that regard, Hrant Dink was the person. Written here, I can see, in short, social cohesion, positive messaging and peace, boosting collaboration, exchange, and solidarity between individuals, organizations, and governments. The most important is, from these discussions, I see that reporting should be clear. And from these discussions, I differentiate different professions: journalist, news reporter, political activist, political agents, as Professor Baş said. These are very, very different issues, and each one of these issues can be the subject of different meeting and discussions and, you know, consideration, what should be, how it should be, and to define the right way of reporting the facts. As I said, the reporter is not a judge. The reporter reports whatever it is objectively, without subjective feelings, without distortions. And an important issue that Professor Baş said is the involvement of the government. Digital disinformation, freedom of speech. It can be at the level of individual, organizational, or governmental. Individual, if there is a disinformation, it's possible to fight against and to take care of it. Organizational, we have legal advisors, lawyers to take care of this disinformation. However, what is and what can be done at the level of the government? This is a very, very critical issue. Because at the level of the government...
Sorry to interrupt. For the sake of having time for other questions, can we please have the question? Thank you.
I am just ending. What is possible to do in front of governmental entity which makes whatever is illegal legal and whatever is disinformation information? What's possible to fight against and to correct the situation?
I think the funny part is that we all not were talking about Oh, I don't know how we can answer this question. I'll be brief. Yeah, please go ahead.
Basically, we discovered that politicians are the main spreaders of fake news in North Macedonia, but widely in Balkans. So I'm talking about local, different shaming the opposition, shaming the opponent, not the opposition. In general, what we have done is we have gathered everybody, stakeholders, media, traditional media, online media, media organizations, governmental institutions that work with media, and we have gathered everybody and said, okay, let's make a strategy all together. Sometimes members of government are reluctant, and we see that, but we as journalists, as a united front of, I don't know, we are maybe 15 or 16 mainly most biggest organizations, and we have sat with them and said, okay, we need this from you: transparency and free speech and some other requests from the government, from the institutions, in order to fix this mess that we're in. And we have so far we have gone on, but this is like in 2.5, maybe 3 years process, so it's not easy, so until we get everybody together. And so far we have gone to working groups and drafting some kind of policies. What are the responsibilities of the government, of the media institutions, of the academia, etc. So, and then we will, I don't know, adopt these documents, which is strategical points of views, and then strategical pillars of acting, and then hopefully we're going to act upon it. Yeah, we're trying. I mean, as I said, when you call people to a meeting and they don't come, they don't reply for months, and when they do, they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I will not be able to come," and then again, and it's very hard.
Thank you. I just need to add something, if I may, but because it's very important. I don't think we are fighting only misinformation and disinformation. And that's where the roles of governments, if I may say, is becoming least important. Now we're talking about regulations on the international level, like the recent thing that happened, the European Union, the agency for regulating artificial intelligence has been taking place, and this is something that will be international, go international. And I always couple AI with social media and the new media, because it is governing. At the end of the day, you need visibility, you need to be viral, you need reach. So now we're talking about malinformation, which is not caused only by companies or politicians or whatsoever. It's even worse. It's happening by individuals. So now our fight is even harder, because it's not only on the upper level, it's also on the lower level of people and educating people. And when we say malinformation, it is when people, a very simple example is when people are using AI, for example, to generate fake videos, or to generate dubbings, or generate deep fakes, images, or whatsoever. And this is something very important and very serious, because it's influencing and affecting what we call collective memory. Because everything that goes into the internet now is becoming a fact. No matter how you try to use, till now, we're getting there. So this kind of cabinet, it's like the archive, and you mentioned the one of the organizations. Another company I'll mention, which is the Internet Archive, which is in San Francisco. So it has everything that went on the internet, even if it was deleted. So I believe that it's important to include governments, but they're not influential, especially from our part of the world. I don't know if you agree on this. Or maybe because we're hating our government so much. I don't know.
Question, beyefendi. Here. Yok. Çok pardon. Pardon.
Sunumlar için çok teşekkür ederim.
I would like to thank our panelists for their questions. I would like to thank our panelists from the questions, without further ado, I would like to ask a question to our first panelist. Education in mother tongue, yes, it is a human right. I hope you can hear me. This is your interpreter speaking. Can you hear the interpreter? Okay. Mother tongue education, of course, is an inherent human right, and it is a proven fact that people who are educated in their mother tongue are more successful throughout their education and their life. So this is a proven fact, yet in certain regions, like our country, we also need to access global wisdom and global knowledge, let's say global medical information. So this should also be a right, the right to access information. This being the case, nation states can at times manipulate people, block their access to international knowledge, and this might ultimately cause more oppression. So how can we balance this knowledge gap, and how can artificial intelligence can contribute to this? If you need my name, I can also mention, but to the first panelist.
Okay, this is a very dear question to my heart, because I think that this is something that influenced our part of the world. Language. Language is the carrier of knowledge, is the carrier of wisdom, as you said. It's the carrier of the culture. It is everything. And it is also one most important thing is that language holds our brain. This is how we are able to communicate our knowledge. If I'm here today and we don't have the interpreter, or I don't speak English, we couldn't be able to share knowledge. But what has happened is that since the 1960s and 50s and 40s, but let's talk about the 60s, because that's when there was a rise in the media, as I mentioned. At this time, countries like France, Italy, Japan, they were so much concerned about the rise of the English language, which wasn't a bad thing. But people were using their English language more than their mother tongue language. So let's go fast forward. What happened? You look at the universities, scholars all over the world. I'll speak about myself and from where I come from. People are preferring to publish in English to get more exposure. But you know how many things are lost in translation? You know how many things are not only lost in translation, there is a certain cultural implicitly embedded in the language, which holds the values, the ideologies, the feelings, the emotions, and we are emotional people. We put, even if we're speaking science, we put our emotions into it. This is to go fast forward a little bit after the rise of internet and so ever. Now we are at a different time. We're not in the globalization. We are at the post-globalization, which means that we've seen that the world have come together. It's interconnected through the internet and so, but it's a different game now. You know, countries like the United States, for example, let's talk about politics a little bit. And when we're talking about politics and we're talking about media, automatically we're talking about the economy. That's what's governing our life. We were talking about the economical situation. Economy is an important factor. So these countries, they look at markets that could be a good profit to them. That's how I began my speech, like profit. Now we live in times where profit is everything, unfortunately. So our countries, they are high consuming markets. Let's look at the Arab market only. The Arab countries, the Gulf, the MENA region, the Levant, these are countries which are consumers, big time. We are the biggest consumers of iPhones. We are the biggest consumers of Androids, of everything, fashion, everything, fast food. This means that our markets must be open to other things. So when we're talking about language and how AI can do this, you know that Microsoft in the 90s was amongst the first countries, the first companies which actually bought a Kuwaiti company which did the first Arab computer. And they had a huge success because they added the Arabic language to their keyboard. And then they started adding other keyboards because they wanted to reach out to other nationalities and other languages. So why language matters? Because when we communicate, we are communicating outside classroom or inside classroom, on panels or whatsoever. When you want to think about something very dear to your heart, emotional, or something which is very much intellectual, you speak to yourself with your mother tongue language, no matter how much you speak English, no matter how much you speak French, because you have the values and ideology and culture embedded in it. And we're talking about the rise of artificial intelligence. The biggest factor that have helped artificial intelligence to rise is language, is its ability to actually be able to decode the languages. And when AI companies, without naming their categories, because when we say AI, there are different types of AI, of course, but to generalize the conversation, they focus so much on natural language processing, which was the most difficult thing that Google was trying to do since the 90s, since the 2000. But there was a project by the United Nations that was based in Geneva, which was working on coding and encoding languages to actually solve the problem of translation. But they did not succeed. They did not succeed not in the technical aspect. They did not succeed in two main aspects, because it's a UN, unfortunately. It's very slow. We know this. It's very slow. I'm saying it out of good intentions, not out of bad intentions. So United Nations is very slow. It's a very bureaucratic organization. They couldn't succeed and basically, take out Google, although they had a lot of support from countries, because of their communication. They couldn't communicate to people and tell people about it, and many of you, or most of you don't know about it. I heard about it by coincidence. The other reason is the funding, and the funding stayed governmental, while if it was a private funding, like the business models that Facebook or Meta or Google have, because it would have been a different game. Because nowadays the business models of companies is different. Going back to languages, you're talking about sharing knowledge. Yes, I'm able to read. Everyone understands English now. Whether we like it or not, it's an international language and it's a good thing. However, we have also auto-translation, which is getting better and better in time. But why don't you want to speak up if you don't speak English? You shouldn't exist if you don't speak English. For example, one of the reasons I chose to publish my dissertation in my PhD, and I just published a book on AI and digital reputation, and my thesis in master's, I was so sure I wanted to publish it in Arabic, but it came at a price. If I have published it in English, it could have had a different exposure. But it's a personal choice, and I believe with time it will become more and more important. So companies and organizations and institutions will be looking at local languages because they want to decode these languages to reach out for more people. At the end of the day, social media companies are there, but it's not a free platform. We all know this. We're paying a huge price, which is our data and our information. I hope I answered your question.
Sinan Bey, sizin...
Ben Türkçe soracağım.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask my question in Turkish. In fact, this is not a question. This is going to be a brief contribution. Yes, it's quite clear that we are living in a community. If we are to go to Manuel Casta, So we're talking about activism, and we can get organized very quickly, but we can also disperse very quickly. We have seen that in the Arab Spring or others. For instance, there was a recent massacre of a cat, so there was a very quick organizing, very quick protest, but it also dispersed very quickly. So we live in a community of network, so it is not long-lasting. For instance, in one elected, recently elected mayor has been able to receive his electoral mandate certificate, and of course it was thanks to public support, but also social media played a role. So if we are to see long-lasting impact, we need to devise other strategies, because we're still fragile, vulnerable. We have seen many campaigns in recent years, but none of them last long. I mean, they have very their impact is limited. They are short-lived. And another input about citizen journalism. First, I have to note that I don't believe in the concept of citizen journalism. One can't have citizen lawyers or citizen doctors. So everyone might assume that citizens, any citizen can practice journalism, almost starting at birth, including spreading any rumors heard in the family circus. But not each and every citizen can do journalism, which is a profession. I actually started my profession in early ages, where we had our typewriters to do journalism. So I believe profession of journalism entails reporting, analyzing. So this is not just up to a citizen just to share a post. Likewise, a citizen who is interested in legal issues or competent on legal issues cannot be a lawyer as such. And by the way, I've always opposed to the idea of objectivity in journalism. This is not possible. Starting from the very first word you type or you utter while writing a story, a news story, is a matter of choice, is a matter of your preference. So what really matters is to take side with human rights, democracy, and pluralism. So this has nothing to do with objectivity in journalism. Thank you very much. Well, of course, one cannot have the same coverage, same extensive coverage for a racist or a victim. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinan. There is one more question from the back row. Good evening. I have a question both for Özen Baş and also Elida Zylbeari. We have talked about digital activism and disinformation and how to counter disinformation and hate speech, how we can do fact-checking, how we can come up with counter speech against hate speech. But what are the implications of all these strategies? Because I had a feeling that we sometimes get stuck in our own echo chambers. We only see the posts that we would actually like to see, because this is how algorithms work. No matter how much fact-checking we do, no matter how many counter speeches we come up with, it seems that we are still confined in our own circles. What would be your take on this?
for this point. It is absolutely very relevant. And so when we say counter speech, I wasn't able to go into much details, but so some people make some groups really do it in a very organized way. So yes, you're right, there are echo chambers where we are only exposed to those who are like-minded or similar to us, we are following only. However, some of these activist counter speech, campaigns do take the measures of, kind of checking out for the other side, so they go into the Facebook groups and try to identify, hate speech distributed, shared by, I don't know, different type of groups. And then they tag their fellow activists, so part of the, counter speech organization, where they can all together kind of, engage with the hate speech all together. So they kind of, these activist counter speech people, let's say, try to circumvent that. They do realize it. However, the effectiveness of counter speech is, I think, what is at the bottom here, the bottom line here. And sometimes when we talk about effectiveness, we are, and this not only goes for counter speech, but also in general activism, we are looking for, or we tend to look for concrete differences or concrete, results, outcomes, where things have categorically changed. Coming from a social scientific background, I studied sociology in my, undergrad and political science. And with sociology, things were very slow. So, and then I went into communication and political communication to be able to observe some, faster change. But yet, even if, that individual level or, at the organizational level of counter speech, even if we cannot detect at the, larger scale, we cannot say that there is not, minor or slower level changes that can take place. And as I said, AI-assisted or computer-mediated tools and serious academic research are trying to measure at the large scale. So I don't think it's a definitive answer to combat hate speech, but it's one of the ways that activists use. So thank you for your question.
I will just, I agree totally with the hate speech approach, and it's what mostly we try to implement the same techniques, especially for online media, online groups and online approach, but also we partner with the national TV, with other TVs. We present our fact checks to different target groups, students at the university, sometimes online, sometimes offline. We make panels and we try to diversify our reach. We partner with influencers, for music influencers, fashion influencers sometimes. So we try, and of course the language is not going to be very academic, but we try to find different people that live in different spaces and not in the echo chamber, as we say, but that exists. I mean, we are human, we cannot escape our own self-likeness and the part of that. But we try. Thank you.
First and foremost, thanks a lot to Hrant Dink Foundation for organizing this panel and inviting myself and the esteemed speakers. And thank you so much for attending, both to the audience here and the online audience. And grateful thanks to our translators, Burcu Hanım, Bilgi Hanım, and sorry I couldn't have the name of our English to Arabic translator doing the translation online. And we have a QR code on the screen. If you would be so kind, we would really appreciate if you can fill in an online form evaluating this panel and this event. Again, thank you so much for attending. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
I had a bad cough, although I took an allergy medicine.
And you ran out of water. You should have